Hello everybody. Welcome to Wildlife Wednesday. It's me, Ryan Godfrey, and today we're talking all about hummingbirds, the lovely, flitty, beautiful, gem-toned creatures that sometimes visit plants. And I am a botanist. There I am, holding a plant, a little white oak sapling on my balcony. And you might be wondering why a botanist is here to talk about birds. And the reason, it's a good question, great question actually. The reason is that, in ecology, when you're studying anything in an ecological system, it's all connected. Every organism is connected to every other organism through a wonderful chain of energy and life. And that means that in studying plants, you can never just study plants alone. You also have to study the various creatures that visit them too. So here today, I'm going to be talking about hummingbirds. I'm also going to be talking about some of the plants that you can grow to perhaps, if you're lucky, attract some hummingbirds to your space, your garden. And don't forget, I can see your live comments, so please let me know in the chat if you're paying attention. Okay, okay. Before we get started with some background and information, I want to check your understanding about some factoids relating to hummingbirds. So we're going to start it off with a couple of trivia questions. And with that, why don't we bring those up? Let's see what. All right. Please do respond in the comments. I will be reading them. I want to know who gets there first. So the first question is rufous hummingbirds. Okay, this is one of the 5 species native to Canada. How far do they migrate? Tell me in kilometers, please. I don't want miles. I don't want meters. I don't want yards. I want kilometers. How far? Did you even know that a rufous hummingbird can migrate? Where do they migrate from? Where do they migrate to? How do they do it when they're so little? Great questions, but not the one that I'm asking. I just want to know, how far do they go? How far can they go? Dylan says 300 something, 300 elephants. 500,000 kilometers is a long way. That is an interesting one. Correct answer is 4,000. That's 6,400 kilometers. Oh, Kaylee, pretty darn close actually. Came in at the end there. There we go. From the furthest ones go all the way from Alaska down to Mexico. They don't all do that, but the ones that do get a medal at the end. Next question. How many times per second do ruby-throated hummingbirds, it's the most common species that you're likely to find in eastern Canada, how many times do they beat their wings every second? Now, what's really interesting about this is actually scientists have been studying hummingbirds for a very long time, but it's so fast, it's like a blur, right? So we actually didn't even know this until recently when we were able to slow down high-speed camera footage. Then we could finally count them. And what did we get to? What did we get to? 200 times per second? Good question. Good guess. Jessica Park, 10 times per second? Okay. All right. That's quite a range. We got 45 times, 50 times. The correct answer, 80 times per second. Every time, every second. Okay, I want you all to try that after this. Make sure that there's, enough space around. But that's pretty impressive if you ask me. Pretty cool stuff. So thanks very much for that. That's really cool to interact with you in that way, warm things up a little bit. And with that, I'd like to get into some background, a little overview of these creatures, these wonderful 5 species that we'll spotlight one at a time in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about my personal interactions with hummingbirds. The first one and the most memorable one for me, I was doing some field work out in the bush, and as I do, I'm just sort of wandering around, doing my thing, looking at plants, smelling some plants, touching some plants, and this crazy, it sounded like a gigantic bee or something. It just went right past my ear, and it was quite startling. So I just turned around, and lo and behold, I spotted this gem tone creature hovering in place, and taking a drink of nectar from some shrubby flowers. How cool. That was I just thought that was amazing. And it turned out to be a ruby-throated hummingbird, the most common species, as I mentioned previously, that you're likely to find in eastern or central Canada. Very, very fascinating times. Um, and what's really cool, from a botanical perspective, is most birds are not pollinators. They maybe are seed dispersers of plants, but they're not really involved in the pollination of plants. But hummingbirds are special because they can hover just like a bee or a fly. They can actually hover by beating their wings real, real, real fast. And in so doing, they can um, get nectar out of those flowers, and they can get dusted. Their sort of face and their throat area can get dusted in pollen. Go to the next flower, they spread the pollen, and there you go. Pollination happened. Fantastic. Wonderful stuff. And what's even cooler is that because a bird's vision is very different from a bee's vision, you tend to find that flowers pollinated by and aiming to attract birds are different color. So in particular, they tend to be more on the red end of the spectrum. That's where they see really well in color, whereas bees see better on the blue purple end and even into the ultraviolet end, which is pretty cool. We can't even see that. Can't even tell you what it looks like. But what you do end up finding is that there's this thing called a pollination syndrome, and you can get way into that. There's so much I could tell you about pollination syndromes, but basically, if you see a red flower that's pointing out sideways, kind of trumpet shaped, that's likely calling to a hummingbird to be pollinated. How cool! So, with that, I wanted to do a quick overview of the 5 hummingbird species that we do find here in Canada. There's over 300 species elsewhere in the world, but we like the ones that live here. So we got some photos. We're going to pull those up. Start off with rufous hummingbird. This is one of those western species. Check out that beautiful rusty gorget. That is what that part of the head is called. It's colorful in both males, very colorful in males, only sometimes colorful in females. Beautiful, beautiful bird. And that's the one that we learned earlier is the migrator, the very fascinating long distance migrator. Next up, the one that I spotted, ruby-throated hummingbird, aptly named. Check out that gorget, um, ruby colored right there. And this is the one we talked about, the wing beats. Um, and here you can see, even in these beautiful, beautiful pictures, those wings are still blurry because they're moving so incredibly fast. I cannot believe. Are you trying that? Are you trying to get 80 beats in per second? Good try. Good luck with that. Next up, Anna's hummingbird. Check out that coloration. Oh my word. This is one of those Western, and it's an iridescence too. That's what's important to know about that. It's not pigment, it's shininess, shimmeriness. The oldest known Anna's hummingbird, based on bird banding studies, is 8 years and 2 months old. Not too bad for such a fast moving creature, packing a lot of wing beats and heartbeats into those 8 years. Next up, my personal favorite, Calliope hummingbird, the smallest of all the hummingbird species, and actually the smallest of all breeding bird species in all of Canada. Wow, pretty cool. How small exactly? Well, measured by weight, it's just 2 to 3 grams, and that is about the weight of a ping pong ball. Imagine that. So incredibly light. That's because they don't have any teeth. They have hollow bones, and they're tiny. Next up is the black-chinned hummingbird. You can see it's a little bit purpley iridescent in this lighting. You only really see that when it's just absolutely perfect shimmery situation, but most of the time it is a black throat under there. And something cool to know about this tiny little bird, its eggs are just the size of little coffee beans, believe it or not. Oh my gosh. And they exist in nests, these tiny little nests that they line with like spider silk. How cute. How adorable is that? So those are our our lovely 5. Um, Again, folks out west are lucky; they're going to see a few more species. Check them off their list. If you're out east, it's all about that ruby-throated hummingbird, which is a really quite lovely species. And now, I'm sure you're dying to know, botanist, tell me about plants. Tell me what I can grow in my garden to attract, or if I'm lucky enough just to have these creatures flying through, I want to give them a little bit of help. I want to give them some nectar, some food um, for themselves and for their babies. So I want to take a moment just to go through and show you some of these plants. And you'll recognize right away that pollination syndrome. It's also important to note we chose a selection of plants here that is they're native in different regions of Canada. So we wanted to cover the folks out west, the folks out east, the folks in the prairies. So don't just go crazy planting all these species. Double check that they are actually native to your region, because native plants is really all that matters, isn't it? It's true. You got to double check that. So, first of all, the trumpet creeper. Here's a great example of a localized species, okay? Southern Ontario only. And that perfect pollination syndrome. So you can see the trumpet shape, you can see the orange coloration, and the sideways. So you can just imagine a ruby-throated hummingbird sticking its beak in there and licking up a lovely meal of nectar in that trumpet creeper. It's a vine, by the way, so climbs up a wall, climbs up a fence. Next up is cardinal flower. It's a really great option if you've got a wet spot. Maybe you want to do a downspout bog garden kind of situation. Wonderful plant for that. It's really the brightest red flower that I'm aware of. And that really falls into the category of things that birds care about. Now, I have to say, you're likely to find, you know, some hummingbirds that go to non-red flowers, and that's cool too. But they do like red ones. Next up is bee balm, another really lovely plant that grows in dry conditions, opposed to the wet ones of the cardinal flower. It's a smelly one too. This is a nice smelling, perfumed um, mint family plant, and it's got that same characteristic of reddish, sideways facing, tubular flowers. That's great for this hummingbird here and many others, I'm sure. My favorite plant of all time. You cannot beat wild columbine. It does everything. It does absolutely everything, and it's so very easy to grow. I grow it out on my balcony, just calling out for a hummingbird. Come to my balcony. Maybe one day. It hasn't happened yet, but it's really good for lots of other things too, including little bees and lots of other stuff. The nectar in this case, by the way, are up at the top of the spurs there, the top of the crown. You can see this hummingbird's doing a good job there, getting up. Next is fireweed. Fireweed is a really nice plant that grows in disturbed conditions. So really tough conditions. If you've got like gravelly soil or sandy soil or soil that's kind of hard for anything else to grow in, fireweed will grow there. And it's native all across southern Canada. So if you can get your hands on some local seeds or plants, absolutely go for it. Um, oh no, we got two more. Hairy beard tongue is another fantastic plant that grows in rocky conditions, sunny. I again have grown this on my balcony, and so it does well in containers. And it's kind of a double whammy because it's got some white and purple and some of that reddish hue in it too. So good for bees, good for birds. Lovely. And next up, I believe our last one is the Michigan lily, pictured here. We also have wood lily. Both of these are really nice plants that grow from bulbs. I mean, how can you go wrong with these lovely orange curly dotted flowers? It's a typical garden looking plant, but it's actually native to our area. Wood lily all across southern Canada, Michigan lily in Ontario. So grow it, love it, do it. Fantastic. Okay, so you've learned something about birds, you've learned something about plants, you've learned something about pollination syndromes, and now it's time for me to get to your questions. So I'm going to go through and check out if anyone has asked questions. You're welcome to ask a question now. It's not too late. Um, Pravina asks, where do Canadian hummingbirds go in the winter? Well, we learned about the rufous hummingbird, which goes all the way from Yukon down to Mexico. So they do, a tiny little bird like that ain't gonna stay in the snowy white north. So they do move. They do move to migrate for the winter. Absolutely. Okay, I also wanted to address some questions that some people have been real active, real excited, and they commented on our YouTube promo video for this. And so, in particular, Mila had a great question about Mila's neighbor has a hummingbird feeder, those ones where you put in the syrup, and they've got sort of mimicking a flower-like shape with these tubes that stick out the side. And the neighbor is getting hummingbirds, but Mila is not getting hummingbirds, despite having planted many flowering plants, and is wondering, what should I do about that? And my answer to you, Mila, is, well, imagine that you had to do all this kind of work to get a little tiny couple of drops of nectar from a flower, and then hey, right next door there's a almost unlimited source of just free nectar. Where are you going to go? But the thing to know about bird feeders, hummingbird feeders, and bird feeders in general is not necessarily the most salubrious, the most healthy choice of diet for a bird. So what you're doing is great. And hummingbirds also eat, by the way, small insects too, and feed those to their babies. So what you're doing, I would say, is really lovely. And um, even those bird feeders can sometimes start to ferment, and then you could have some alcoholic substance that you're feeding to the birds, and not necessarily the best option. So that's what I'm saying to you. Um, let's see. Um, let's see what else we have. What do hummingbirds eat? Gabby. Gabby asks. Gabby, so it is this um, syrup produced by plants, the nectar, which is just really sugar water that they eat. But it's not just that, it's also small insects. And so that's why it's so important to grow native plants that support lots and lots and lots of different insects, including the little ones, even the little ones that I know sometimes are kind of annoying, and they get in your ears and they're just like, what are these little insects doing? Well, they're feeding hummingbirds, amongst other things. So, like I said up front, everything is connected. Every organism matters. Every organism counts. And so, grow those native plants, folks. Do it. Get up to it. Okay. Um, I see Periscope questions. I do. I could answer Periscope questions. Where's my Periscope question? I live in Southeast Michigan. Um, Will I get hummingbirds if I put out sugar water? Manolo. Okay, so it's not an easy, like, if you put out sugar water, you will get them. Um, they may be migrating through. You kind of have to get lucky with hummingbirds. There's no guarantee. But if you do see them and you have your sugar water out, you're giving them a bit of a drink, it's a good idea. But really do consider it to be like a special occasion if you get there. That's Manolo. Um, there you go. Oh, how often? How often, Jamie asks, do hummingbirds drink during the day? The answer is constantly. During the day, if they're flying, that rate of wing beats is so energy intensive that they need to keep eating all the time. They cannot stop, or they will run out of energy. So, imagine like you're driving a car and you have to like gas up the car as you're driving constantly all the time. That's what's going on. They just keep doing it all the time. And fascinatingly, I read that some hummingbirds have been measured and it's been shown that they drink up to 2 or 3 times their body weight in nectar every single day. Wow, that's a lot. That is really, really a lot. Um, Fascinating. Okay, I think with that, why don't we move over to trivia now? We've got another couple of questions to round things out. Let's see if you were listening. Let's see if you were paying attention. I want to see who's the fastest, Who's the smartest? Who's the best? Let's get into it. Trivia, round 2, starting now. All right, let's see it. First question. First one up is, okay, the calliope. Remember the calliope? The smallest breeding bird in Canada. How much do they weigh? How much, on average, does a calliope hummingbird weigh? I would like the answer in grams, please. You could also relate the answer to a common object. Oh, I see it. Jilu, ping pong ball. Manolo, 10 grams. Gabby, 2 to 3 grams. Jilu, 5 grams. Okay. Catherine, 2 to 3 grams. They're great answers. Kaylee, 3 grams. Cool. Let's see. The answer was 2 to 3 grams. Just 2 to 3 grams, the weight of a ping pong ball. Imagine that. Such a complicated and beautiful organism. Barely heavy enough to register on a typical scale. Fascinating. Manolo, that's all right. Okay, next up, how old was the oldest known Anna's hummingbird? Okay, I did mention this. I mentioned that it was bird banding, from which we know this information, and that means that they caught the bird humanely, put a little plastic colorful marking around its leg, then let it go and do its thing. And they recaught it, and maybe recaught it a few times, and they measured it again this number of years later. So they know that it's at least this old. I got 8 years. Some of you were listening, and that is really good to know. Susan, 8 years. Yes, in fact, 8 years, 2 months, exactly. Oh, Catherine, wow, very precise on that one. You got it. Nice. Okay. Yeah, bird banding, fascinating stuff. I have some friends who do it, and they love it, and it's good science. We love it. So, next question. The black-chinned hummingbird, if you remember, that one with the very dark area down here. How big were the eggs? How large were those eggs? If you remember, I related it to a common household object, and that's what I'm actually looking for. I'm not looking for a size in centimeters, although you can give me that if you want. Susan, jelly bean size. Jilu, coffee bean size. Okay, all right. What else have we got? Any other answers? Black bean, coffee bean. Y'all, Samantha, coffee bean. Let's see what the answer was. Indeed, coffee bean size. I love it. You were listening, paying attention. And how cool is that? Like just teeny little thingy. If you ever take a look online, look for pictures of these things. It's adorable. It's like a dollhouse egg and nest. Next up, the colorful iridescent patch on a hummingbird's throat is called what? I did mention the name. I mentioned it in passing. Maybe you were listening. Maybe you don't know how to spell it, because it is a little bit of a strange word. Sounds vaguely French to me, to my ear anyway. Let's see. Who is going to be brave enough to attempt the brach? Susan, brach. I like it. That's a good name. Oh, this was a tough one. Okay, did anybody get it? Courgette. Courgette, said Catherine. Catherine. You got it. You were paying attention. Yeah, Susan got it too. Fascinating. Yep. Very, very good. That's wonderful. Okay, courgette. Yeah. Say it 3 times fast. Okay, so that's the end. That's it for trivia. Thanks so much for participating in that. I like that back and forth, that interaction that we have together. It's really a good time during these socially distant days we have. And that really does round us out to the end of this episode of Wildlife Wednesday, all about hummingbirds. But it's not the end because we're going to be back next Wednesday. My colleague Rinjin will be here. Rinjin loves talking all about big cats, kitty cats of various types. And next week, to dedicate Wildlife Wednesday to um, International Rainforest Day, which is happening next Monday, we're going to be talking about the largest kitty cat in the rainforest, which is the jaguar. Wow, jaguar, so cool. Hey, and don't forget, by the way, we here in Canada have rainforests too. Big shout out to the Pacific temperate rainforest. It's true. It's a biodiverse region, burgeoning with life. Lots and lots going on in that rainforest. And don't forget it. We've got one right here at home. Don't have to go to the tropics for a rainforest. Just go out west. Take a look. All right. And with that, I will bid you good day, and we will see you again next week. All right. See ya.